You're live.
Good. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. Today it is a Thursday, so our primary focus on Thursdays is labor. And it is great to welcome so many labor faces in today. We're going to begin with the new bill, S-173, and then we're going to address a bill that got vetoed last year. So, and discuss whether or not we will continue working on it. So we have the sponsor for 173 is Hunter Ray-In. It's pretty sloppy for those of you who don't have to commute out there. So people are having some difficulty getting in. But Sophie, if you'd be kind of kick us off on the discussion of 173, that would be great.
Yes, so Sophie Sadatny for the Office of Legislative Counsel. S-173 primarily does two things. So one is to revise certain statutory provisions relating to vocational rehabilitation services for injured workers. So it's a workers' compensation element to it. And then the second is to create a mediator position in the Office of the Board of Vermont Labor Relations Board. So just briefly by way of background, for vocational rehabilitation, the proposed changes are based on information that's come from the Workers' Compensation Plaintiffs Bar, indicating that the vocational rehabilitation screening requirement that's in current law is not working well. And so I anticipate you'll be receiving testimony from them as to the details of how that is or is not working. And so the proposed changes to remove the statutory requirement that injured workers eligible for vocational rehabilitation services undergo an initial screening, to add language providing that injured workers can initiate vocational rehabilitation services themselves if the employer or the carrier does not refer them within 90 days for vocational rehabilitation services, and then to add language to make sure that injured workers are informed about their right to seek vocational rehabilitation services in the future. And then just quickly on the mediator position, as you may be aware, the Federal Mediation Conciliation Service was a small independent federal agency under the National Labor Relations Act, dealing with the coverage for that, which is primarily private sector employers, but Vermont's had the benefit on the public sector side of being able to use the mediation services of the Federal Mediation Conciliation Service free of charge. And so what happened last year, there was an executive order from the administration that slashed funding and positions in the Federal Mediation Conciliation Service. They went down by 95%. There's been litigation over it. The FMCS is being rebuilt. But one of the questions I think that's still outstanding is whether or not it will continue to provide free mediation services to Vermont to public sector employees, because that's not part of its mandate. It's not part of its statutory mandate at the federal level. So I think there's an interest in having replicating what previously existed through the Federal Mediation Conciliation Service, making that service available through our Vermont Labor Relations Board.
And that was the primary funding for our mediation services?
We don't have a mediator in the
So
Vermont
we don't have a mediator at all now?
So what happened before was the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service out of Albany would provide free mediation services.
So it's regionally handled?
It's regionally handled, but the number of full-time mediators was slashed from, I can't remember, it's like 143 mediators down to 4 or 5, and now they're back up to 60. From what I can tell, it's not clear to me that they would be in a position to continue offering that service to public sector employees. They would still, individuals that are covered by the National Labor Relations Act, I anticipate they would cover, but I don't know that they would provide the same service to public sector employees in Vermont because they're not under the National Labor Relations Act. So there's a gap there.
Which we will hear more about, I assume, from Judith or from whoever.
All right, and I'm just going to go through the bill itself, the language.
So So at the moment, is the bar too high for vocational rehabilitation for both rehab or?
I
I
think,
guess we'll wait for Keisha to
Yeah.
explain why we're.
so my understanding was that what this is seeking to do is remove that initial screening requirement that's in the current law. So yes, I assume folks that are on the ground will have more information about why that's been problematic. And then it has a number of other things, like including making sure that injured workers are aware of their rights to vocational rehabilitation services. So I'm just starting to look through the bill itself. So on page 2, the introductory language there of section 641 explains what vocational rehabilitation services are.
Yeah.
And so essentially, you know, if an employee is unable to return to the position they had, it's really retraining to make sure that they can be in a position to receive other employment that provides them with a comparable wage. And then what this bill seeks to do is it adds, and this is at the bottom of page 2, add the right for workers, or I guess the form would provide information to workers about their right to request vocational rehabilitation services in the future. So I think this was a separate issue in terms of you may not be able to receive eligible for vocational rehabilitation services today, but maybe down the road, your injury is such that now you do need those vocational
This is
rehabilitation
an injury
services.
that has to happen at work.
Right, it's a workers' compensation injury. And then, again, this language on page 3 is really removing the language around the initial screenings that we talked about.
Yeah.
And then on page 4, this is where it adds in to make sure that an injured worker can initiate vocational rehabilitation services if the employer fails to assign them a rehabilitation provider within the 90 days following the worker being out of work. So that's on the vocational rehabilitation piece. And then switching to section 2 on page 4, this is just adding in, the first one there on line 14 is just a technical drafting change. And then subsection C adds that the board may employ a mediator to provide free mediation services for public and private sector collective bargaining units and employers upon reaching impasse during collective bargaining. So again, this would expand, it wouldn't just be for public sector employees, it would also, even though private sector employees are not under any of our Vermont Labor Relations Act statutes, this would also, if there was a mediator in the Vermont Labor Relations Board office, they could also provide mediation services as well to private employers. Again, at the moment, the FMCS is being rebuilt, so it's not clear how readily available mediation services for the private sector will be as well. And then we have an appropriation to make this a full-time permanent position in the office of the Vermont Labor Relations Board, and then with an appropriated amount of $115,000. That is obviously up to all of you in terms of what the amount is. That's kind of a placeholder sort of estimate of what salary and benefits might be, but it's, you know, again, it's not scientifically established.
It's established for a certain level of salary. So thank you, Sophie, for a quick first walkthrough.
Yes,
We just would love to have you explain what the problem is we're trying to solve with this. And we heard a little bit about the cuts, the federal cuts on the mediator front.
Right.
But if you would expand on the why, the need for this bill.
Well, in the broadest sense, I mean, 2 chairs ago, right, Senator Clarkson and I, and Senator Brock, remember, Senator Sorokin, this was a lot of what he would focus on in the committee, is making sure we were up to date on our labor relations and that they were fair and balanced and strong. And so, you know, I appreciate that the advocates are keeping the spirit alive of just telling us each year, not, you know, solutions in search of problems, but the issues that arise that are in the way of the labor relations and people getting timely payments, you know, timely care and support. And so, you know, I see these as technical or housekeeping often in nature. We sought another position in the Vermont Labor Relations Board last year that did not make it into the budget. You know, some have asked, is this the right position? You know, this was a request and recommendation from labor. I see the value certainly in mediation, you know, impasses and long-term litigation take a long time. Mediation is, you know, a way to break impasse. But regardless, you know, the whole bill is just a package that we may potentially want to attach other things to, but so that we have a technical labor relations bill.
So is a fix to workers' comp a technical? I mean, it sounds like it's more than a technical.
Well, I
It sounds
guess,
like it's
yes.
not, and maybe we'll hear from
I think to hear from the advocates
David
that
and
problems that they're running into, that, you know, people, we always ask, is this one or two people? But when it rises to the level of a pattern that our labor lawyers are seeing, you know, usually that's when they bring it to us, and I think they can explain why.
right. So, yes, we need to understand that problem. Our workers' compensation applications being rejected.
Right.
What's happening. So, thank you, Sophie. That is, so I think we will, first hear from Judith, and then there may be others, and Kelly is here. But I think, Kelly, you are going to speak to this and to 125, which just one.
Just this one.
Just this one.
Workers' comp.
Right, so, so why don't we first move to Kelly? And whoever you are, hi, it's good to have you, you are English.
Ego, Rosie, and I are for the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, we need you to move, because that is Sophie's chair, but Kelly is gonna move, and you can go and sit in Kelly's seat. Thanks. It's good to have you, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have an intern from the chamber. And Kelly, welcome.
Thank you.
It is good to have you back.
Nice to see everyone.
Kira or Kira?
Kira.
Kira, nice to meet you. Kira, just think, he like use your card, era like Taylor Swift tour.
I just think Sierra, but with.
I'm deep in Bob Weir's passing, actually. I'm mourning right now, so I'm not thinking of Taylor Swift.
Oh, that is worth mourning.
Kelly Massica here for the Vermont Association for Justice. I'm a workers' compensation attorney representing injured workers for the last 20 years here in Montpelier with Big Fox Inner. I really appreciate the willingness for this committee always to hear from my side of things and to be open to hearing about improvements that I think can be made, not just for my side of things, for injured workers and claimants attorneys, but also frankly for carriers and adjusters in the Department of Labor. This bill does, first of all, it's really short compared to last year, thank you.
Yeah, 5 days at the moment, Kelly.
That's true, I heard. There's just modest changes here so far in terms of the workers' comp side of things, but what we're talking about here are the vocational rehabilitation benefits for injured workers. It's only with regards to work injuries. And really we have 4 main benefits in workers' compensation claims. And when I explain vocational rehabilitation, first of all, many injured workers are not entitled to this benefit. The vast majority are not entitled to this benefit. It's only if the work injury leaves somebody unable to go back to the work, to the wage they had been earning before because of the work injury, So if I decided to take a year or two off and work on a farm, for example, because I just wanted to enjoy, or I don't know, go on tour with a band for a year or two, and I was earning a much lower wage and I was injured in that job, that's the wage the comp carrier would be required to help me replace. Not my job as an attorney, not my earning power. It's not like a personal injury claim where you can claim future lost earnings because of the full extent of my earnings.
Right.
It's the job I was doing at the time when I was injured. So I've got a carpenter right now who really can earn a lot more than what he was earning when he happened to have got injured. We're stuck with what the rules are, which is what was he earning in the 26 weeks prior to the injury. So it's about the pre-injury wage, the job the person was doing when they got injured. And if they had a second insurable wage, another W-2 job, that counts too. And we're looking at whether the work injury has affected their ability to go back to that job after treatment, after they've done everything they can do. If somebody's education or training allows them to do some other work to reach that kind of wage, they're not going to be entitled to this benefit. So it's, again, a very few select people who are entitled to this benefit. So it's rare that somebody might be entitled to this benefit later on and not like it's be entitled altogether later on, but not initially. So on page 2, line 20, 21, and page 3, line 1, where it's added there that we want this notification, it's not a new right. It just is that we want the DOL to include in their paperwork that injured workers should be aware that you might be entitled to this right down the road if you someday this injury affects your ability to earn that wage. By the way, the wage probably you were earning when you had the injury. So if I've got a client who has a bad work injury to their back at 45, has surgery, gets back to that job, works 5 years, does fine, but over time can't do that job anymore, and the doctors say so, the medical evidence shows that, that person may be entitled to voc rehab 5 years later. Same employer, same carrier, all that stuff. Many people not represented don't understand that, and maybe if they don't have a great claimants attorney, they don't understand that. We want injured workers to be notified, at least to be on the paperwork. You may be entitled to this in the future if your work injury someday affects your ability to do your job.
And the notification happens after they've had the injury.
Correct. There is basically this 90-day trigger that happens. If somebody's been out of work 90 days, there's some paperwork that goes out by the Department of Labor asking an injured worker, are you interested in hearing about this benefit or not? You know, in a perfect world, I wish injured workers understood the extent of what, because a lot of people don't return it or say no, and they don't really realize what they might be potentially giving up. I urge people to always say yes, they can always turn it down later. But when that form is filled out or sent out, that 90-day out of work kind of trigger, it advises them of some rights. And I just want that notification. Claimants attorneys want this notification to be included by the Department of Labor to injured workers, letting them know, hey, you might be entitled to this benefit now or in the future. It's just a notification piece. On to the screening, which is
So it's just notification to.
Yeah, it's not a new right.
Right that they already have.
Correct, and they may not be entitled. It's just like you can ask about this someday. You know, someday in the future, if your work injury does eventually affect your ability to do this very physical job or whatever your job is, you have the right to ask and inquire whether you might be entitled to this benefit down the road, even if you're not entitled to it now. And it all depends on the medical evidence. Obviously, if the person's back at work outside of work, a car accident, something else, the comp carrier is not going to be on the hook for that. It has to still stem from the original work injury and the natural consequences of that injury.
Got
it. So on to the screening. I mentioned that there's kind of this 90-day trigger when somebody's out of work to check in with the injured worker. And what's supposed to happen is the carrier is supposed to identify these people who are out of work 90 days and kind of get them in the process of being right now under the law screened to see if they might be entitled to this benefit and move on in the process. What the real formal first step is actually an entitlement assessment. And that is really where they're figuring out vocational rehabilitation counselors, private VR counselors who work for companies and know Vermont workers' comp rules for VR. Those people are making an entitlement assessment determination. Is this person entitled to these benefits or not? It may be made on very early on in the case at the 90-day mark, rarely. It may be made 2 years later, depending on how catastrophic or where it could be made anywhere along the line. There was an attempt at some point in the last, 20 years, I've been practicing 20 years, and it was early on in my practice, to try to do this. It was in good intentions to have a screening, a pre-entitlement assessment step, and farm that out to the state VR folks who don't do workers' comp VR.
Right.
They do state VR. And so there was this screening step, send it off to the state VR folks to do this kind of like baby screening and see, can we kind of like help facilitate and expedite the people who really need VR and get them through faster? And that's what's happening, supposed to be happening under the law, is that at 90 days, the carrier is supposed to be uploading medical records through a safe, secure system through the department, through the state of Vermont, to state VR folks. The state VR folks are, get assigned, I think, at random. It might be, I don't want to say filler work, but they have assigned clients in their counties, as I understand it. And so when they are able to take on extra work, they're taking on these screenings. And they're basically asking a few questions and doing this screening and deciding, should this person get a real entitlement assessment now, or do we hold them back and wait longer? Folks, it's not working. It's not working at all. I could bring 20 people in here to tell you it's not working well. It's delayed. The poor folks for state VR, they're well-meaning, they're not well-trained. They don't do workers' comp VR. They don't know what the nuances are for entitlement. So they're not great at screening, and it's not their fault. And the solution is not better training for them. They're not the ones who do voc rehab for these injured workers. So it really, in my opinion, and all the claimants attorneys, and I'm not sure that there would be a lot of fight. I'm interested to hear what the other stakeholders in this process have to say about it, because to me, it's just much more efficient. Get rid of this screening with the state VR folks and just put it back to where it was. Have the voc rehab counselors who do voc rehab for injured workers get assigned and do the process as they should.
And when you say that process, that they are reviewing after 90 days what the medical situation is with this person and what that person needs in terms of voc rehab.
Right, and let me be very clear. It would be so great if it's happening after 90 days. It rarely happens, and I have examples, and I would love if this bill goes on, which I hope it does, for you to hear from a voc rehab counselor, possibly or two, who could come in. She emailed me some examples. There's like a case with 2 years the person was out of work and went through screening 3 times, and it did not capture this person when it was obvious they needed to be moved on in the process. The big issue, guys, is somebody could be entitled to pretty helpful benefits. It's the range of help with a resume, interview skills. Or for somebody with a high wage who's been pretty seriously injured, it could be classes, it could be help with an associate's degree. It really could be pretty
So that's
substantial.
all work that is done with the voc rehab counselor.
Correct. However, a person could be entitled to really substantial benefits, but they don't get wage replacements tied to that time period. They move independently. So the faster I can identify for my client, this person is likely entitled, I need to get them going on voc rehab while they're still recovering. Because sometimes we do know, and the doctors do say, this person's not going back to, this heavy physical work. We're looking at a sedentary life job. And we know they need computer skills. We know they need sedentary skills. We know they're entitled to.
So this delay means we're delaying workers getting back into the workforce?
Well, what it is workers are getting delayed getting back into the workforce for sure. They also can't often use this benefit because when they're finally found entitled, they're off the weekly wage replacement and they've got to go back to work somehow to start paying the bills. The timing's off because it's not tied to them being out of work while they're recovering. So I did a lot of Social Security disability work. I understand voc rehab really well, and I'm really good at trying to get that moving. But a lot of injured workers are not even getting voc rehab started in earnest until they're at the end of their recovery. And even then it's a slog and it takes a long time because the process is slow. You guys did a great thing several years ago before I was involved in testimony, tying the end of the wage replacement benefits to the carrier having to show, yep, we've referred them to voc rehab. They have to show that now. But I mean, that's the end of the line of their recovery process. That shouldn't be the beginning of somebody getting the conversation about going back to work and, oh, you can't go back to the employer, you need retraining, let's get started on a plan for you. Some plans are quick, they might be a month or two. Somebody might be entitled to an associate's degree that's gonna take 2 years because they made $100,000 before. And now they are catastrophically injured, but they don't want to go on disability. Absolutely, absolutely. So this whole screening thing is getting rid of it being in the state VR folks, this initial kind of, and it was done with good intentions, but taking it out of the state VR folks' hands, keeping it within the system of COM. I think there's a lot of improvement that could be made in VR in general, but taking the screening out of it and giving us as claimants attorneys the right to initiate after 90 days if the carrier's dragged its feet and not done it. We already have the right to change counselors. So when they finally do assign somebody, I have the right to immediately file the form and choose the counselor anyways. Why not let me file the form after 90 days if the carrier hasn't done it? Let's expedite it. Let's get injured workers these, in the process earlier.
So I think Randy has a question for you.
I'm just curious, are there any measurements as to how often this happens and what the economic impact overall is for situations like this?
How often it happens that there's a delay? I don't know. I think it's kind of like the penalties where we didn't have a lot of information and now we've got trying to get the data. I know, again, for myself, my firm, the folks that I work with, we have informally a lot of information that there's a lot of delay. I mean, there's a lot of delay. I don't have our numbers.
So who benefits from the delay?
I'm not saying it's even purposeful. I think,
it's just the way the system is developed.
there's a bit of a benefit if I could be wearing my cynical hat. Some of these plans can be expensive and injured workers feel the crunch and they're more likely to be interested in a settlement because they feel the financial. These cases don't have to settle, guys. These cases remain open and people remain entitled to medical benefits, even if they move on to a different job. If the evidence still shows that the original injury is still affecting them, they still might be entitled to some treatment over the years. And so carriers would love to settle these claims, be done with the risk. I'm not against settlement in theory, it depends on the terms. But a lot of injured workers feel the crunch after the recovery. They've been getting 2/3 their wage. There's more of a pressure to settle the claim, especially if, what the heck am I gonna do now? I don't have a plan in place. I haven't done retraining. I'm desperate. I'll take that lump sum they're offering. Yeah, I don't want to settle, but gee, I really wish now that I know that I was entitled to a CDL or I'll just, CDL is frankly pretty quick compared to some of the other plans I've seen. But this is for everybody. I mean, I have clients getting everything from learning to be a phlebotomist to 4-year degrees. Those are rare, but I've gotten clients 4-year college degrees because they earned those kind of wages. And they were, state of Vermont troopers with a high school degree earning 6 figures who can't be those troopers any longer.
So how many how many injured workers' comp claims do we have a year? Do we know?
I don't know that number, I'm sorry.
I mean, I had heard in the past, David here happened because, in the past, I've heard some of the number of things from the Department of Labor without like 9,000 a year, something like that. Now, many of these are quick injuries, they come back, most of them are litigated, but I've heard that number in the past. I could be totally wrong.
So I think
can find out.
when we hear from workers' comp,
Yeah,
in the Department of Labor, we would want to know, Rowan, how many are in this class? Because this sounds like
It's a very small.
This is the most severely injured, who are 90 days out. Who fits into this category?
There are statistics, sorry to interrupt you, Senator. There are statistics on how many people are found entitled to this benefit. And then there's these return to work plans that have to be formally submitted to the Department of Labor, and either they're agreed to by the carrier or we ask them to be ordered if they're denied. So there is submissions and some data on that. But that doesn't capture the large number of people who may have been entitled, who frankly were never represented and didn't even realize they were entitled, didn't utilize the system, or who were represented and had a great attorney, but the timing was totally off because they didn't have the jump start, the timing was off about it.
Well, yeah, it sounds like this could be a win-win for workforce if we can get people into a plan, redeveloping their skills and getting back into the right job.
And identifying earlier those folks. And the data says that people who are invested in forward thinking about returning to work. So even I've had clients, we might not know for a year, frankly, if they're entitled. But if they're kind of touching base every so often with a counselor who's talking to them about, well, what did the doctors say, or they look,
So this 90-day provision would get, if we do this change, this, for a bare simple brain here on labor, because it's a new world for some of us who don't live in this world. This would get them into a work plan and into a treatment plan faster and get them hopefully, ideally, back into the workforce in whatever capacity, whether that is their past job or a new career and a new job, training for a new job.
absolutely faster, absolutely, and absolutely.
That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. And let me be clear, the 90 days wouldn't change because that's already the trigger, and whether the trigger is that it currently goes to screening with the state VR folks, or it goes, their screenings done away with and it's 90 days where it goes to the internal folks who do workers' comp care, the private folks, it's still 90 days. It's always kind of been the trigger. By the way, that doesn't even pick up everybody that it should. That's not even a great, the total screen.
So what? Is my understanding that there isn't a work plan to get them back into the workforce or back into the other job that they were doing? That doesn't even begin until for 90 days?
Correct. Correct. And oftentimes, even if there is the referral at 90 days, which even though by the law it should be, if the referral for screening, it often doesn't. The process of developing a plan, that takes a while. I don't want to make it sound like even if everything's done right, it's going to happen in 90 days, because that's very rare. Once in a while it does. The stars align. The VR counselor is really good. The person knows and they know and the medical evidence is there, but it's rare that it would even happen. I'll be honest, voc rehab drags on. It drags on even in the best case scenario, but getting rid of the screening, boy, would help people get started faster. A lot of it has to do with the timing of they're out of work and recovering, and comp is helping them by paying their wage replacement benefits.
Right.
When that ends, I might be entitled to a great VR plan, but who's paying my rent, my mortgage, my car payment? They're paying for these classes, this and that, but I can't afford to not be working.
So, given our time,
Yeah.
I think if we have other questions on this, we're gonna shift to Judith on the mediator front.
Yeah.
We will, if and when we take this bill up we will hear more from you, we will want to hear from workers' comp and from a few voc rehab people.
Yeah.
You and David could provide some witnesses.
Sure, a voc rehab counselor and an injured worker maybe who went through that process, the frustration, because there's some people who are dying to get back to work and they're frustrated by this process.
Any questions for Kelly? We'll have Kelly back.
Thank you, guys.
David, do you have a question?
I have a process question. Is this screen what the public is saying? No. Do they see the,
They're seeing us in the.
well, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, the
because
public is seeing this
Okay,
right
okay,
here.
I'm just asking. Just want to make sure that we're giving respect for just.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. But they're seeing Kelly. Aren't they
I'm
seeing?
just
Kelly?
asking if they're seeing that screen.
No, they're seeing Kelly. They're seeing the screen up in the right corner, which has Kelly and you and Tom on one side,
That's valid.
Randy and
Good question.
Keisha and me on the other. I believe that's
I
correct.
just want to make sure you're getting bang for your buck.
And they're not seeing
It's that, I appreciate that.
It's that free YouTube life that you're gonna have forever.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. This is great. More to follow.
Thank you.
And hi, Jamie. I'm surprised to see you here on this bill. Judith, would you be kind enough to join us and let's just pivot to the other part of this bill, which is the mediator part. And Judith, I don't know if you, Kelly, thank you very much for coming as quickly. Thank you. We really appreciate it. Judith, are you clear on who all of us are? Well, to have an introduction, David, why don't you start?
Dave Weeks, Rutland County.
Randy Brock, Franklin, and Northern Grand Isle.
And Allison Clarkson, Windsor District?
Keisha Rom, Hinsdale, Chittenden County.
Mount Chittenden, Chittenden County.
And if you introduce yourself and
Sure, thank you.
educate us about the mediator.
Sure, thank you very much. My name is Judith Dillon. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Labor Relations Board, and the Labor Relations Board is grateful to this committee and the legislature for initiating a solution to the gap created by the loss of a robust FMCS. I I would concur with the summary or the history of the FMCS provided by Ledge Council for years, although.
Just remind everybody what the FMCS
Federal-
stands for, because some people were still not in the room.
Absolutely. Federal Mediation Conciliation Service.
And can I also ask for background, because I just don't know, the Vermont Labor Relations Board?
Yep.
Is it not nonprofit? Does it work for
Sure.
labor?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. The Vermont Labor Relations Board is an independent state entity that administers the 7 state labor management relations acts. Most of you may be familiar with the State Employee Labor Relations Act, the Municipal Employee Labor Relations Act, the Judiciary Labor Relations Act, but there are 7 in total that we administer. Most of the ones that do the bulk of our business are the State Employee Labor Relations Act and the Municipal Employee Labor Relations Act. And the Municipal Act covers municipalities as well as supervisory unions. So we handle elections to unfair labor practices involving towns, villages, school boards, and we also handle under the State Act, we handle matters involving UVM, state employees, Vermont state colleges. So it's a state entity, and we have jurisdiction over and administer the State Labor Management Relations Acts. There was reference to the National Labor Relations Act.
And before, just to
Sure.
finish on the setup,
Yep.
because we often in our appointments, and we have one appointment floating out, we have jurisdiction over approving who is appointed by the governor to the Labor Relations Board. Judith works with the Labor Relations Board. You have 6 members. Can you just describe
Sure.
that?
Sure.
Because that's intentionally designed to be balanced.
Absolutely. So the work of the board and decisions are made by the 6-member Vermont Labor Relations Board, which are citizens of Vermont that 2 of them come from a labor background, 2 come from a management background, and 2 are neutral, meaning that they don't have any history of affiliation or leadership with either labor or management. And the board itself is staffed by myself and 1 clerk. So it's a lean, mean entity that does a lot of work for workers and financial stability in the state.
And if you can kind of give the committee a notion of the caseload that you have,
Sure.
because it's significant,
Yeah.
and we have not been.
I just finished drafting our annual report. So in 2025, we administered 62 cases, which is anything from an election petition to an unfair labor practice to a grievance. We didn't have any impasses this year, which is touching on the subject of the proposed legislation. But it's a lot of work that we handle. The board itself met 4 times for board meetings. It met 17 times to deliberate, meaning come to a decision on 17 matters. We held hearings during that period of time, and we also held elections during that period of time. So it's a very we don't control the flow of work coming to the Vermont Labor Relations Board. It comes as the employees might have a grievance, and it trickles through the internal grievance process of the state or of UVM or VSC, or if there is a unfair labor practice, we have no control over it. So we don't have a slow season or a busy season. So that's generally the work of the board. So what my understanding, the purpose of this legislation is to address the loss of mediators that provided free, and that's significant, they provided free mediation services to labor and management engaged in contract negotiation impasse. What that means is during the creation of a collective bargaining agreement, which is a contract that dictates the terms and conditions and the rules of the road between labor and management, while they're negotiating that, they might arrive at a sticking point and they just can't get over that hump. And the neutral mediators that FMCS has provided over the years, number one, they're trusted, they were trusted and respected, and both labor and management, my understanding, had respected the work that they do, but they're able to come in and offer an experienced, impartial eye in helping the parties get over that hump to resolve the disagreement they might have regarding an issue.
And now with the cuts, we have fewer, and they've been regional in the past.
Yeah,
based in the Albany area.
Yeah, they were based in the Albany area, and for decades there was consistency too. There was one mediator that was working for 10 plus years, and then our most recent mediator out of the Albany office had been working for, I think it was 8 to 10 years. But they didn't just provide assistance to labor disputes involving public impasses between labor and management regarding cases or the jurisdiction of the Vermont Labor Relations Board. They also got involved with private disputes, which are those disputes or those types of relationships governed by the National Labor Relations Act. For example, UVM Hospital, I should say, UVM Hospital, when they would have a dispute regarding their unionized labor and unionized workers and the hospital administration, the FMCS would get involved in those types of disputes. One thing I wanted to mention, there is a kind of a statutory, a formal process for mediation, and there's also an informal process. The formal process is the impasse, which is what I've just described. During the course of negotiation of a collective bargaining agreement or a successive bargaining agreement, the parties get stuck on one or more issues, and the mediator helps them get through that and to ultimately get them to a contract where they can agree and hopefully ratify. There's also more of an informal and for the process for appointing that mediator, the parties, let's say, for example, Vermont State Colleges, they're trying to negotiate a successor contract between, one unit of their workforce and the administration. They get stuck. They inform the Vermont Labor Relations Board, we reached an impasse on this issue or the entire thing. Most of the time it's one or more issues regarding a particular contract. We would like the board to appoint a mediator. Most of the time, because everybody worked with FMCS because it was free, when submitting the request for mediation, they would identify the mediator that they want the board to appoint. And within 5 days, within 1 or 2 days, the board would order the mediator to conduct the mediation. A similar process takes place with the Department of Labor regarding impasses involving the municipal statute. So if there's an impasse regarding the municipal statute, Labor and management collectively ask the commissioner of the Department of Labor to appoint a mediator. And my understanding through conversations with union representatives, as well as David Belanger, who's one of our board members who for years worked for Vermont NEA and had engaged in labor negotiations for decades, well, for at least 10 years. They would go to the Department of Labor, and the Department of Labor would pick the FMCS mediator. Again, because they're respected, trusted, and most importantly, free.
So now with these cuts, we're looking at, because our time is a little challenging, we'll come back to this bill.
Yeah.
We're now looking at federal cuts, yet another federal cut, which we're being asked to fill with state money, which may be appropriate. But as you know, we have a lot of them. We are now, instead of going to a pool of mediators and taking advantage of that, we're now looking at having our own full-time mediator who would do private and public sector mediations. Is that correct? I'm just wanting to.
The language is public and private, so the board, if that's what
Yeah, no, and the question I guess I have for you is, cases a year, do you use a mediator for? I mean, can we justify a full-time mediator in Vermont when we used to just go and meet on an as-needed basis, go and ask for a mediator from this pool of people in Albany?
If you're including all public and private, absolutely. And you would also need more than one in the event of a conflict, or in the event that there was more than one negotiation happening at the same time and there was a request for mediation services during the same period of time. So for example, in New York, they have, a panel of mediators. We're not New York, we're much more nimble, but they also have contract mediators just for that purpose. If there is a conflict situation, or if they need to go beyond that one mediator or within their panel to kind of cover the overflow. If you're just looking at those cases that I've described, those impasse cases that come to the Vermont Labor Relations Board, I would say no, because traditionally there were four, on average about 4 of those impasse requests a year to us. That's not counting how many would go to the Department of Labor, and that's not counting all that went to, that availed themselves of FMCS through in the private sector.
So how many cases a year? And then we've just got to pivot to our next decision, our 125. I guess my question is, how many cases a year do you see this mediator taking on?
I think to get that answer, you would need to confer with folks from UVM and other private sector folk and the Commissioner of the Department of Labor to get a full picture of that. I began to reach out to people, and I didn't get all of the information I was looking for. I do have information about the cost of mediators in other states that I could provide either now or subsequent.
I think let's do it subsequently when we take this up and discuss it more fully.
Yeah.
But I think for us to discuss, we need to appreciate the problem.
Yep.
And the problem is.
Yep. And if I could just add, I think the Legislative Council referenced that FMCS is rebuilding. I'm not sure if that's what, I think they, in light of injunctions that have come out, slowly some of the former mediators are returning, but in the 26 budget, it's significantly less than prior year, and it really only allows for approximately 18 mediators, and that and that they're looking to close the agency. That's my understanding of reading from media reports, Bloomberg Labor. So I think this committee can do its own investigation about that, but I would just caution you that, Dolly, I don't know that we're on the upswing from the impact of the cuts.
And even so, be much more modest than what was before.
And just in issues that the board had or questions for you to think about as you're hashing through this is there's reference to that DGS should pay for space. Ultimately, if that's the case, our budget needs to reflect that because they'll charge us for space. So what the dollar amount that was included would need to increase, and obviously I'd like more of an opportunity to flesh that out with you.
Judith, thank you very much. This is so grateful. Would you be kind enough to get additional witnesses you think are appropriate for this section? That would be great.
Okay.
And if there's anybody from the feds that you think we should hear from as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And you mentioned UVM in the private sector. Maybe we could have one person from.
Yeah, I'm throwing in a name just because I know he's.
If you'd be kind enough to email it here.
Absolutely.
That would be great. Thank you very much. This helps present the challenges we face in both these. Sophie, would you be kind enough to come back? We have Tim. Hi, it's good to see you. We're going to pivot to Tim in a minute, but first we're going to make a decision about work of ours last year S-125, our decertification and judiciary, labor bill that we had last year that was, vetoed, as you'll recall. S-125, we're gonna review it quickly with Sophie, and then we're gonna discuss whether we want to take it up again or not.
After leaving 2 minutes to present a bill, I would just say, but beforehand, I don't think it's worth using our precious time on something that the governor has already expressed a veto on, so I don't want to go through the same motions. If there's a substantive change that we're going to consider on this, then sure, but other than that, we are always pressed for time, so I'm less interested in taking something up that's just not going to get across the vision storm.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I'm just gonna have Sophie just quickly remind us what was in the bill, and then let's have our discussion. Thank you for your vote.
Right, yeah, so S-125 went through quite a metamorphosis. I asked Kiara to provide a document that we had looked at last time, which was what the House did, took the Senate bill and then what the House did. But in brief, what S-125 would have done would have allowed judiciary supervisors to organize and bargain collectively. Currently, they're excluded from the definition of employee under the Judiciary Employee Labor Relations Act. And then the other big piece of S-125 was it would have increased the required threshold of showing of employee interest to decertify an incumbent union from 30% to 50% plus one to trigger a secret ballot election, and that's under each of Vermont's 7 labor relations acts.
Right.
So it passed the, came back in that form from the House. The Senate passed the House version. It went to the governor, and again, I think you have the governor's.
We have the veto message.
Veto
Thank you for
message.
including that as well.
Right. And I did speak to the Secretary of the Senate about what happens when it comes back to
Just
committee.
remind us.
And he advised that the committee can either sort of vote it back out as is, could leave it on the wall, but you can't change the bill.
Right.
If there's things in the bill that you like, you probably need to put those in a different bill unless you were going to move this forward as is. So to Senator Chittenden point.
So, thank you, that's very helpful. It is a decision I felt we needed to make together. And, so, committee, what are your feelings?
I agree with Senator
I concur.
Once vetoed, twice shy, yes.
Well, as someone who advocated for the bill, I would just say, I don't think this was necessarily based on the merit of the issue that the governor vetoed the bill. And we have a unanimously supported labor organizing amendment to the Constitution that will be on the ballot for Vermonters in November. So I appreciate that the committee forwarded this once. And there's, a record of us being consistent in supporting the right to organize. We've now heard that 3 people would be opposed to moving it forward again, but the record stands in this committee that
we supported it.
you did support it.
As did the Senate. I mean, it's just in the wake of the political realities of our body and the votes we have to override a veto would be very difficult. So I think pragmatically, it makes sense for this issue to lie for a moment, for a year, and be readdressed next biennium by a fresh set of eyes. But I think these are important issues.
I appreciate you giving it a few minutes.
Yeah.
Well,
I think-
I think we did have, I don't recall precisely, but didn't we have a split vote on some of these provisions?
We
I
had,
know, I
Yes.
think, yeah, and so it was not a unanimous vote.
it was not unanimous.
Sorry, I was referring to the labor amendment.
Yeah, the labor amendment is fine, but the 50%, going back to 50%, I think there were some folks, myself included, who were in favor of that. And then the issue of the judiciary supervisors, in which there was opposition, I believe I voted opposed to that, although I voted for
Yes.
the labor bill in its entirety.
Right, no, and we appreciated that. And so I think, given where we are at the moment, I think this issue should be taken up again in the next biennium, and would encourage, for all of us who are around next session to, readdress it in some capacity. And with that, I think we say thank you to Sophie. I think we needed to have this conversation. I'm not sure this, I think our labor energies are better spent elsewhere in this session, unfortunately, because I think some of us cared about this quite a bit. So anyway, thank you very much, Sophie. I think we are done with labor for the moment because we had 2 economic development witnesses who weren't able to join us yesterday. And so we're going to pivot to economic development for with Tim Tierney. So Tim Tierney, come and join us. David, thank you. JP, thank you. Sophie, thank you. That was helpful. And Judith, thank you. More to follow, and if you'd be in touch with Kiera about additional witnesses, that would be great. Same with Rowan. Thanks.
So it sounds like step up and people leave the room.
Yes, there's a mass exodus except for an intern behind you. Tim, it is wonderful to have you back in this committee.
Yes, wonderful to be here.
And we are looking forward to hearing how things are. It's been a tough year in some ways for you with our Canadian partners. But if you'd kind of introduce yourself and give us an update on where things are and what we might be doing to further improve and build bridges with our oh so valued Canadian partners in economic development, we would appreciate it.
Yes, well, good morning, everybody. So Tim Tierney, I'm the Director of Business Recruitment and International Trade in the Department of Economic Development for the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. And today I want to actually expand not only on how we're dealing with Canada, but the rest of the world. So basically, I'm just going to give you a brief summary of what we're doing internationally and all the things that we attempt to do.
And what we can continue to do to build business interest, help you with your recruitment efforts. I mean, those are the key things we need moving forward.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I mean, obviously last year, it was about a year ago, right about now, we had a tariff announcements, and obviously we had to react a lot of different ways. I know that even your committees and other folks here had different resolutions and factors, and a lot of it was us kind of maintaining information and providing information to our businesses, and we still have that information on our site because the tariffs are ever changing. So duties. But one thing, we did have a congressional designated spending request, and that was moving really well. It was basically, and this is obviously federal congressional spending, it was moving really well until the government shut down. And so we don't know where that stands, but it was basically that we were going to try to provide a cadre of experts that we could provide to small businesses to help navigate tariffs and duties and markets. We'll see where that stands, but we know we try to do that on our own, but this was kind of elevated to a bit. We are still involved with our Senator Peter Welch. He's still doing roundtables. He's doing another one next week to follow up with companies that he met with originally. So I'm going to be on that roundtable, and it's great to hear what's going on and see the impacts, because a lot of our the impacts are anecdotal still. It's hard to measure because everyone has different varying degrees, and it was just an ever-changing landscape, as you know. So that was the hardest thing for companies. And you've heard it before. It was the nothing could be set in stone. It was not knowing. It was I think that was bothered some businesses. But obviously, some businesses have improved their supply chain and looking at how they can do something. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's continuing to be an ever-changing landscape as we see data.
Any data, because yesterday we got a fantastic briefing from tourism regarding the Canadian expenditures in the U.S. dropping 47% over the period. I'm wondering if there's any business data.
Well, it's just traffic data, there's not too much business data, so I wish I had more concrete, and it's so anecdotal from business to business to business, so and then where it lies, and, I mean, one thing that we've seen is we have, on the steel and metal companies, that's where I get most of the requests about people looking to enter the US. And a lot of those tariffs were there before, and I think now they're thinking of it
So they've
increasing.
been added to.
They've been added to and gone down, you're right, so it's a whole, but that's where we get companies that are looking to basically, expand here into the US and into Vermont, that's where I'm getting most of the
So
inquiries
they're
from.
avoiding, by having it anchored here, they avoid the tariffs.
Correct, right. So, or sometimes it's warehousing, or sometimes it's actually using our contracting companies to maybe produce, their product too, which that's a good thing too. I mean, we look at, certain things that are good for Vermont.
Right, but how many, so I think what David, what we'd all love is a notion of how many companies a year, what your goals are. I mean, is your goal to recruit? I mean, it's tough because it's a,
Right.
but I mean, you must have goals for recruitment, you must have some data on companies that actually have it now created and anchored a presence here in Vermont.
Yeah, and well, I can think it's not the quickest process moving a company over, so I mean, a lot of it is development. I mean, companies I've talked to 2 years ago, they were just getting their real estate through now, they're working on all their different applications, they're building their capital in certain ways and figuring out visas. I mean, so it takes a while, but, we do have, oh, go ahead, sorry.
I just wanted to add that it's not really a number, it's a trend. Whatever you can provide on trends is, that tells us.
Sure.
History.
Well,
That's sort of what I meant.
what trend that we're seeing is that there is
I just
now,
wanted to emphasize that, because lots of times in these briefings, we get numbers, we don't get trends. Trends are.
well, the one trend we're seeing now is that, still, we are the market for the world. We are, and there's people, I think there was a reaction, obviously, to the diatribe that happened, and now people realize they need our market. That's always going to remain. That we're seeing that more people are actually contacting us now. I mean, we have inquiries in Enosburg, we have inquiries in Richford, we got people looking at facilities in St. Johnsbury. I mean, all these things sound like they're right over the border, because I think that's the first place they look. And from the Quebec side of things, so that's just recent. Since December, we have these 3 inquiries. So
That's right.
so it's opening up again, and they're looking to come and invest, I think is a key thing. What we've done to help, and you might be aware of some of these things, was actually we want to go up and maintain those relations and the importance of Quebec and Canada relations and how important it is to Vermont's culture and economy. So we've made some efforts. We had the boat ride event from Magog where we put 30 people on the boat.
I wanted to be invited. I love that boat.
That was a great thing, putting people on. And actually that helped out tourism a lot. Eastern Township started working with Commissioner Pelham, and they worked on this co-branding and trying to work because they were affected too, right? So those kind of things, that's a great effort. It's all we can continue to do is to provide those kind of connections. We're very close to the parliamentary members and the Canadian consulate, of course. Do you have a question? Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like this is a bit self-serving, though I'd only be taking time away from my family if it was helpful to the relationship. I'll be in Ottawa for Winterlude, which is their landmark event in mid-February with my family. And I often get just random one-off emails if there's someone from Sherbrooke or Quebec City or the consulate that's coming. Is it helpful if I go through you to say your Senate Majority Leader will be so?
I think that'd be great, and I think there's our parliamentary members that are from the Sherbrooke or right across the border, and then those things they understand it, and we could definitely make a connection.
I've never been to Ottawa, so I didn't know.
So Winterlude's not held in Waterloo. That's interesting, because there's a Waterloo, Ontario. That's interesting.
It's called Winterlude.
I know, I'm saying, but it's not held in Waterloo. That's why I'm just making a joke. So that's Winterlude's not held in Waterloo.
It's Winterlude.
Oh, Winterlude. I thought it was Winterlude. I'm sorry.
It's a winter event.
Yes. And I love that skating on the canal.
Exactly. My husband remembers it from his childhood. So anyway, I've never been to Ottawa. And it's like, if it's helpful to say, you
No,
know.
that's great. I think that to continue those connections and.
Well, I don't have any connections.
But I think
Or we
I didn't
continue, you will make connections if we connect you.
If you connect us, yeah, so I don't know if you care, like, I
No.
just don't know if I should email you if I'm
I
doing.
think that would be great, and I think all of us need to be ambassadors in that regard, and when we travel to any country, I mean, we did this when we went to Taiwan,
Right.
we went and met with, companies that are good.
What's your email?
It's tim.tierney, Tierney @vermont.gov.
Okay, I didn't have it saved in me.
Okay, keep going.
So, and obviously we maintain, we made a lot of connections there, and we continue to, utilize our in-market representative that we have in Canada. And I don't know if you can't see this. I mean, I could have sent this report to you yesterday, but I can do it afterwards. This is just what we did in 2025. And if you see all these people here, these are folks that they contacted. These are all the folks that I met with, that they brought to us. And then out of that, these people had a visit. And out of that, we received this one company from that last year. But that's how it works. That's kind of the pipeline. It's going to take, it's speed dating with companies. So I can send that to you.
And Tim, this is, as a result of our investment in the Quebec office.
That is correct. So what they do is they provide the leads for us. They're out there contacting folks representing Vermont in Quebec. They provide the leads. I meet with them and then we see their interest right here. So for example, and then we show them, all the different programs that we have. We're introducing them to capital folks. I mean, it depends on what they're looking for. And a lot of it tends to do with facilities, right? That's the run of it. Does the facility work for them? How quickly can they get in the facility? Are they truly ready? But a lot of times these people are thinking about it now, but they're really planning for a year and a half, 2 years out in their company. So it's just an interesting thing, staying in touch.
So the trend sounds like.
I was a professor for my daughter this year.
Oh,
In the back class?
Yeah.
I will be teaching her in May or June or something.
Ellen Tierney. Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
So Tim, the trend seems to be sort of a big stall after the initial launch of 25. And then now, as things sort of are sugaring out and settling a bit, more interest beginning now, the beginning of 26. It sounds like we're getting a few more, the antennas are going up.
That is exactly it. We're seeing more, and then that is the trend. And again, the trend always was we are the market, no matter where we are in the world, right?
So talk about the rest of the world.
So I mean, well, the one thing is, I can talk about, so I'm talking about, first I was going to mention too, that we also, internationally, we have the State Trade Expansion Program. I don't know how you're familiar with that. It's a Small Business Administration grant that we have applied for since 2012, and we've always received it. We applied for the step 13, as we call it, the 13th iteration of it, and we receive about $250,000 a year to help export companies, Vermont companies, export or digital compliance or attend trade shows or find new markets, do market research. But that was stalled with the government shutdown. And so we were pretty worried that we weren't going to receive these funds. We just got word that it is alive in the federal government, but we just don't know for sure if there's going to be a whole federal allotment to help all the states out, so that every state gets it. So,
how many companies in the past 13 years have passed have taken advantage of that?
A lot. I mean, last year we had 42 companies utilize those programs to varying degrees, whether it was helping out with customs compliance or marketing to some folks attended 3 trade shows or going to a large trade show in Germany or Dubai. I mean, so that's what we help them with, different eligible expenses. So it's our only money that we have to help out our exporting into the world. So it's important that we get this. And then hopefully, if we don't get it this year, we're just like, can we get it next year? I mean, can we, for the next July 1st, we're hoping, or October 1st.
Or especially that this federal government would support a program like that.
You would think, right? I think it was just in the bureaucracy level.
Shutdown.
And then also I think the fact is, who's left there that knows. We've seen the impact. We work very closely with the U.S. Commercial Service. And luckily, our representative here in Vermont is still with us. She's been at the job for a long time. She's a true partner, but she's been limited on travel. So it's kind of interesting that she can't travel to Burlington or get reimbursed to travel to Burlington kind of thing. So I mean, it's all these little things that are working on, but she's still a strong component. But we've seen there was 12 people up in Montreal that we used to connect with, and there's one person left up in Montreal, the U.S. Commercial Service. So those are effects that impact us.
U.S. Commercial Service.
U.S. Commercial Service is under the International Trade Agency Administration, and they basically, their main task is to help companies that are export ready find markets around the world. So they tend to be their trade experts, I would say, or export experts. And they just, and we're lucky to have Susan Murray, who's been here for a long time and knows a lot of folks and helps us with a lot of training. And actually, I think they help our companies learn how to become better exporters, and that's a key for us, right? So.
And how many, if you were able to give us a notion, how many of our Vermont companies are, well, that's hard to ask how many export, but because a huge number do.
Right, and it's all varying too, right?
Yeah.
It's all, yeah. And you know, we have some very large, I mean, obviously, Beta's going to be a large exporter. We have, Darn Tough actually is a
huge exporter.
Huge exporter. And Clark is a stellar star exporter, making the cookie cutters and some of the food color dye they do. Interesting enough, it's a really big export to England because they've come up with food dye that matches all the soccer teams in England. So people make cookies of that color, and it's taken off like crazy. It's genius.
I need that for ours.
Yeah, some of us will be too. Thank you. So I mean, obviously, there's Burton Snowboards. We have a lot of Orbis. We have a lot of large exporters in this state, and then we have a lot of small exporters, just people sending things to Canada, right? So it's interesting, and it's actually helping them navigate that, and it is a lot to it. So the compliance, and I think the difference was last year was we never really had to work with importers. We were really focused on exporting, and I think the tariff kind of just flipped the script a little bit. So, and realizing that's where we need that, trying to get some help navigating that. So I'm going to flip over to the recruitment side beyond Canada. And this actually has to do with Canada too. And last February, we signed the Northeast Semiconductor Manufacturing Corridor Memorandum of Agreement with companies and province of Quebec regarding semiconductor manufacturing, knowing that they have a very large semiconductor packaging in Bromont, Quebec. We're here in Burlington or Essex, and then there's in Fishkill or Albany, New York is another one. But in the world map, we're a corridor. We're on a straight line. We're the belt of Orion, and we're trying to grow that and strengthen that to know that we want to become a place where people are looking at semiconductor manufacturing that not only is really close proximity, but also out of New England is the largest workforce development in that field. So we're trying to become almost a Silicon Valley for semiconductor manufacturing. And with that, it changes where we're looking to go recruit companies, knowing that we are the middleman in this really strong corridor. And so now we're hiring a representative to go to Malaysia and Singapore just to find supply chain folks. Those are markets that are very strong, and get these supply chain folks that can come here, and now they can be in this belt, so to speak, that we're creating here. So we're actually sending someone there early February to go recruit companies, meet with folks, and this is all under the Select USA program, which is another U.S. commercial service program that their embassies go recruit in those countries. These companies, so they're doing the work, they're vetting the companies, they're looking at the recruiting, and we show up and meet with them. So it's going to be impossible for us to do that otherwise.
Well, that would be exciting.
It's very exciting.
Valley of the Northeast is, I think of Massachusetts and the Beltway, the 128 Beltway being that. certainly we could give them a run for their money, we would hope.
Well, Massachusetts is actually providing a lot of that workforce, right? And so, they'd rather go live in Vermont.
I think anything to help, we heard from Kevin Chu yesterday, was
Kevin,
a
yeah.
little discouraging. And anything to affect this 51 out of 51 states or territories in terms of economic momentum, anything that we are doing to build our economic momentum for our businesses and our business.
Yeah, and this
State.
And this is one of the, I think, the key factors, and that people realize that we need to sell this, we need to, pitching this, strengthening it, and actually being a strong partner with New York and Quebec and maintaining that. So I see that we need, has to be a focus.
So it sounds like it is a focus.
It is a focus, and I was just in New York City it's very, very exciting that I think people are knowing and realizing, and people don't realize that Vermont was the first IBM fab here, right? So we have a long history here of semiconductor manufacturing, and then also the UVM with the GaN technology. I know I can say it, I don't know. But basically, it's the, very cutting edge technology in the semiconductor world, and working on that and strengthening that tech hub and growing our workforce and growing our knowledge. So it's, very important.
And what are we doing to enable that advanced manufacturing for our companies? What are we?
Well, they're working on laboratory advancements, collaboration with universities and other lab techs up in Quebec and in New York. So they're trying to collaborate to strengthen this whole corridor, so to speak. And also they're working on having designated programs at UVM that are producing people that are in this field and know that's coming out of college. So I think it's all, we're getting the ball rolling here, right? So another company, so when we go look out at future markets too, we're looking at people that have very similar or the ties to us, to Vermont. They understand Vermont, get Vermont, or it's actually going to work for us. So Austria has been a country that we've really been focusing on because we're so similar with our terrain, our geography, but our size of our company, I think our ethics, we're very closely tied to Austria. So we've been spending a lot of time with that too. I'll be going to Austria next week on another recruitment trip. We're meeting with companies in Vienna and the town of Graz, which is in Styria, and we're hoping that we'll get some really good companies out of there. There's so many different sectors that we have ties with. They basically manufacture all our wood boiler and wood furnace or biomass furnaces here in our state that we use in all our public buildings. And I think a good future would be for them to start producing components here in our state, because we are such a big user, and there's a lot of folks that are involved in that sector. So that we're working on that. And there's always tech. Tech is an easy one to sell no matter what it is. Biotech, infotech, meditech, you name it. We're gonna try to look for tech companies too. Those are easy pullovers. We also, another interesting one is Iceland. So we had a woman that moved here from Ireland. She was basically created a political party in Iceland, moved here with her husband, lives on Grand Isle, and her name's Heida Helgadottir. And she was so surprised about all the things that we had here in Vermont and what a vibrant tech community and our entrepreneurship. And so we did the same program your daughter's in. She was the year before, correct. And that's kind of how we met Ada,
And somehow she was interviewed, I feel like, on Vermont Edition, which is great.
She didn't breathe here, she's from there.
Yes,
She came in once.
didn't she come in? I think she's interning or listening for one of our companies.
Could be. I think she said she was at the State House too.
She was.
Yeah.
We all met her the other day.
And
Last week.
and I went to Iceland to go meet with Business Iceland, which is basically their private-public partnership to go increase business in Iceland. And it's one of the few countries that have less people than Vermont. But talk about that, but a country that punches above their weight. And now they understand not only the importance of tourism, which is new to them, but also the importance that they need to find foreign markets, and this is really strong. So what they really like, and actually we had a webinar yesterday with 16 Icelandic companies, and we have another one next week with more companies talking about Vermont as a soft landing place, because we're very supportive. It's the U.S. market. It doesn't matter if you come into the U.S., but we are a very supportive place for Icelandic companies to land into the U.S. market. So that's what we're really pushing. And a lot of it's because of her too, her connections. I went over there to visit them, and she knew every single person on the street, so she's just a great person. But that kind of tie has really made us like, wow, Iceland, who would have thunk it? But it's really paying off, and I think that will continue to pay off, and it just happens to be the strength of that relationship. So, I would say, there's all kinds of things, and we stay involved in so many different ways. I mean, I belong to so many different groups of council of state governments, which you're aware. I mean, work with our CSG East on the state with the Eastern Trade Council, which is the 11 Northeast states, and we work a lot trying to work together, but also build up our regional trade with different companies and knowing best practices. But also on the New England Canada Business Council, which does a lot of trying to keep that relationships going. A lot of it is utilities and fuel oil. Obviously that's a big component of what they're doing, but that's important to all of us, So, so I mean, it takes a lot. It's a complex web sometimes, but obviously keeping these things going and keeping us vibrant is the key here. That we need to stay as an international.
We need to stay and grow vibrant. So I guess my ask, all right, is what can we do additionally to improve the scenario that was painted yesterday by Kevin Chu in terms of our business, recruiting new businesses, growing our businesses? That's less you, but I mean, recruiting new businesses and really what could we do to really help your work? And
sure.
You're in the Economic Development Committee, we're your partners here.
Understand.
What can we advocate for in your budget? What can we do in addition to that, what can we do to help recruit more businesses to Vermont?
Well, I can tell you that, so the CDEP, which is the company that's our in-market representative in Canada, that whole contract ends this October. And I would say that means we'd have to go put it out to bid again to find another representative. But I think the importance of having a Canada in-market representative is crucial, and I believe we do have an ask-in for that.
To whom?
That's a great question. I just know it was in the.
So if we're not advocating for it, I think in this budget.
Yes.
We have to be able to be clear on why we're advocating for it, what the amount is, and because we would want to probably include that.
And I believe it's 150 for 2 years is my.
I thought it was 300 for 2 years.
150, but yeah.
Okay.
We can clarify that.
We're trying to have to get that figure for us.
Correct.
Remind us, show us that chart again, 25 to 1.
I will, I'll send the whole CDEP report that they have over the years. So, and obviously, I think, we still have the Rural Industrial and Development Program, which is out there, which is basically, came out of this committee to help with keeping facilities going through our regional development corporations. And I think, there is some funds there left. I think that's always a key factor is sometimes it all comes down to our availability of facilities and lack thereof. We do have some.
So is that an issue that we need to be working on with our RDCs?
Well, we're trying to provide them funds, and we did provide them funds, and it was basically providing 20%. This is my opinion solely, that the 20% was it was hard for them to come up with the 80%. I think it was we thought it was going to go right away, but I think it was them coming up with
How about Chip with facilities?
Well, Chip could work for facilities too, right? So it's
dropped it out there. We had this conversation.
Is there housing? Yeah.
Very, very housing.
So we can create one for industry as well.
And then I know that there's a land bank
Yes.
in there, and then I know that's very been housing centric, but when I looked at it, I said, that is a great thing for also these like commercial properties or some of these other things that are out there, and it's just another retail, commercial, industrial properties. And land bank can be used for that as well. I think other states, that's one of the critical things that they do with the land bank as well. Just saying that's another good way to re-up facilities. But again, it's a hard one, as far as that goes. And then obviously I had an intern do a whole, which I can get to you if you're interested, compiled all the different incentives around our country that other states use. And diving into that, I mean, obviously it's gonna take another, think of what, and we try to do comparison, like how do we rate and rank there?
And what do we offer, and what don't we offer?
And right, what do we offer and what other states offer? Are they doing things more efficient or what's working for them is probably the next step on that.
But you're learning every time a company says, no, I'm gonna go to Maine instead, or no, I'm gonna go to New York. You're hearing what it is that those states offer that we don't, that are answering their need. And I think that would be more interesting for us to address
Yeah.
rather than all the incentive programs that we obviously don't offer and can't afford to necessarily. But what are the few that we could be reviewing and
Yeah.
considering, David?
And what impediments can be removed?
Exactly.
Government impediments.
Right.
That's
Great.
a sort of all.
Agreed.
Yeah,
You know, is there any connection between what Kevin Shu is doing and that kind of information in terms of feeding into his work?
I don't know if Kevin has used this work that we did, the intern just finished up. So. But it makes sense. I mean, what Kevin's doing and what it brings in. Yeah, it's just interesting because right, some people just have really good ideas that you haven't ever thought of, and that's what we're trying to look. Or like you said, the impediments, or regarding whatever it is. I mean, we're really competing with upstate New York. Tends to be the place that's kind of actually people are going to go there. I mean, obviously they have a larger population to the south of them that can provide more resources.
Buffalo or Vermont.
you are sitting next to a Buffalo Grill.
I know. I think that's why I said it, yes. But but there's some, but they're going to, Potsdam.
Yeah.
Some of these other places because the state can buy them a building. And, it's a little rough.
Or give it to them.
Give it to them.
But we have vacant, blighted, non-code compliant buildings that we could improve and give to them as well.
But the key factor about what I'm saying is our Vermont brand, I think is one of the strongest state brands there are. And that is a selling point that, made New York, can I say that? I mean, it just doesn't match with made in Vermont. We do have that. That is so strong. I think we need to start pressing that.
That leads into the industrial world as well. I mean, yes, that's true
So-
for food and for other pieces.
I mean, like I said, furniture, I mean, but even gloves, I mean.
Oh, Sam's
apparel,
Club.
right? So I mean, just the made in Vermont just has a whole different meaning to folks, so.
So if you'd be kind enough to, if you bring us back, sort of some barriers you think we could be addressing, and some of the most creative incentives that would be affordable for us to offer, I think we'd appreciate that. If you were able to do that
Sure.
in the next week or two, that would be very helpful.
Deep dive, here we go.
Right, unless there are other questions for Tim, I think we're gonna take our break, and we're gonna come back, at 10:45 and, meet with Joan Goldstein, who's our new head of the Vermont Economic Development, Agency,
I know.
Authority.